Good morning. This is Dr. Cooper, and this is a announcement for the ENH114 African American Literature class. Today is week 4, and we are starting Module 2 today. So I want to go through a couple of things to make sure that you're all ready. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Modules tab. And while I'm waiting for that to load, I just want to congratulate those of you that have successfully completed your first module. Good job. Way to go. So not much changes from here on out. We get a lot of the same things, just different topics. So we have finished the first 3 weeks, which was Module 1 and the oral traditions. I hope you enjoyed reading about the trickster tales and different African folk tales. But now it's time to move on to Module 2. Now, the one thing that you want to do is make sure that Module 2 opens for you. And for that to happen, I've pointed this out 2 times now. This is the third time. You want to make sure that you have green check marks over here. Your screen will look different than mine. But anything that doesn't have a check mark means that you have not either completed it, you might have to just view it. Sometimes you have to score at least a certain amount, as you can see here. And other times you just have to submit. In this case, you just have to submit. So make sure that you are doing all of those things so that the next module opens up. So we're moving into the slavery era, and I want to talk just quickly about your research projects that you're going to be writing or starting on. Many of you have already gotten your topics approved, and some of you are still wondering, what are we supposed to be doing? Well, first off, you have to understand what the contemporary period means. My last announcement to you, let's go over there really quick. I gave you some links and some information about the proposal and what contemporary means. So, I mean, right here, postmodern, contemporary, if you just click those, it'll give you a definition. So those of you that are submitting proposals that are asking for um, the opportunity to write about slavery or to write about authors who lived during the slavery period, that's not contemporary, right? It has to be post-civil rights era. So 1970s and beyond is what you want to get. You'll know that you're picking a contemporary author if the author is still alive. So you have to do a little bit of research before you can even submit your proposal. So I'll talk a little bit more about that here in the end. But let's talk about what we're starting today, or actually yesterday, Monday, with the slavery era. So you all have to view this page, and it's just the overview of the slavery era module. And basically, we're going to be reading the literature of slavery, but also the literature of freedom as well, because many of the slaves wrote about how they escaped slavery. So we're going to read some slave narratives, which were produced by former slaves, but they were also instrumental in documenting life on the plantation for slaves. But we're also going to read about the abolitionists. Those are the people who helped free slaves and help end slavery as overall movement back in that day. So we'll be doing a lot of reading, both short stories, not both, but short stories, some poetry, and also little snippets of some of these slave narratives. So I gave you your time advisory again, so you will have 4 weeks to work in this module. That's a long time, and there's really only about 24 and a half hours. So if you break that down, that's about 6 hours, 15 minutes for each week. So not a lot to commit to, but I've also gone through each unit and given you a time estimate on each unit. So the very first unit, which doesn't have any lessons, is just going to take you a half an hour. It's sort of an introduction to slavery. So you want to make sure that you don't skip that. And then you can see that the other 4 modules also have time estimates on them, and they have anywhere from 2 to 4 lessons involved in those. Some of the lessons are really short, where it takes 15 minutes to complete a lesson, but then others might take you 4 hours. So just make sure that you're paying attention to the time estimates for these lessons so that you can spend plenty of time working on them. And then these are just the outcomes for this module. So read those. It'll tell you what you're supposed to learn and what you're supposed to get out of this module. All right, so for this week, you are working on, as I just mentioned, Unit 2.1, and the conditions of slavery is the first one. This video is only about 7 minutes long, so I want you to watch that. And then, of course, down below is some information that I need for you to read as well. So overall, that should take you about 30 minutes to get your introduction into slavery. Then you'll go back and then plan your time accordingly based on the other other modules. So for week 4, you can see that I'm estimating that you should be able to do 2 of these units. Unit 2.1, which is the one I just showed you, and then Unit 2.2. And you'll learn about the poet Lucy Terry, who is probably the first African American poet, and then one of my favorites, Phyllis Wheatley, is a poet. So you'll read some poetry on this one, and then you can also just listen to an introduction to this unit from me. All right. Now let's go back to the proposal because I know many of you are having trouble. So I had a visit from a student today. I don't think she'll mind me telling you that Jalissa stopped by, or Jalisa stopped by. Her name is just like mine, Elisa, Jalisa. And she had a question about her research proposal. So I want to go through that and clarify some things. She made me laugh when she said that when I said that your proposal will not be accepted, it didn't mean that you would get a 0 and you couldn't move forward. It just meant that I was going to ask for you to resubmit it. So some of you have gotten that announcement from me that your proposal was not accepted, but I need for you to resubmit it. You can still earn full credit. I just want to make sure that you get it right. So by me saying that I wouldn't accept it, it just means that I'm not just going to let you submit anything and then have you struggle through this project. I want to make sure that each of you picks a good topic. So I want to make sure that I say that's not good enough, and then can you re-clarify, can you resubmit that, and so forth. So what I'm asking for first off is you're going to spend 12, 14 weeks working on this project. You have to pick an author. So these are out of order, but basically the second statement here is where you should start. So what is the name of the author that you're going to use? What is the text that he or she has written? Or if you're using a collection of shorter works like short stories or poetry, what is the title of that? Or what are the list of the titles of those documents if it's not already in a collection? And then what is the purpose and your rhetorical stance? So basically, all I'm asking for you is to say, hey, I'm choosing this author, I'm choosing this work, and I want to study this work to learn more about this topic. Now, you have to do a little bit of research for that topic. So, for instance, if you are choosing an author like Octavia Butler, then go find out some of the books that she has written. One of the most famous books is Kindred, but if you look at the synopsis of that book, you'll learn that it's about the slavery era. Well, yes, Octavia Butler is a contemporary artist or writer, but she also writes about the slavery era. Not solely, though, because we've learned today, when I was talking to Jalissa, that she also writes books that aren't about the slavery era, and those might be a better choice for this project. Okay, so yes, contemporary authors can write about slavery, but no, I don't want you to do your project on slavery because we're doing that module right now. So think of this project as module number 7 or number 8, and it's contemporary, it's today. We want to write about what's happening with authors today and what their themes and topics are today. So do a little research, and I would recommend just looking at Wikipedia, finding out what the themes are for that particular work and what other works that author might have written. Now, as far as your research question, once you know what the major themes of the work are, then you choose one that you want to study, and then you create a question out of that. So if the theme is the struggle of an African American gay male and the struggle of living in the 1980s, then you write a question about that. So you say, well, the question is, how does an African American gay male survive in the 80s based on the themes of this particular book that you've chosen? So it's not like you have to come up with just some random question. You're really looking at the research that you've done and then turning the information that you found into the research question. What is it that you're going to find out by reading the book, researching the author, and researching the work? What is it to be found? All right, so many of those questions are answered just by doing a quick research on the author and the book itself. And there'll be many different questions. Now, here's the key thing too to remember is that your question might change. Your theme might change once you start reading. So we get a book, we think it's about one thing. It might be the socioeconomic struggle of all people, But when you start reading it, you notice that the author focuses more on women. So you change your theme because maybe you want to focus more on African American women. It's up to you to decide what the theme will be, and you don't have to stick with it. The only thing you have to stick with is your choice, the author and the book. And in many cases, if you change right away, you can even change that. But I don't recommend any changes after we've started 2 to 3 weeks for sure. So by the end of this module, you are not changing anything at that point because it's too late. All right, and then the last thing is just a statement of 2 to 3 sentences that explains how your project situates African American fiction in the context of social, political, and cultural issues. Basically, I'm just asking you to clarify that your book does indeed involve social, political, and or cultural issues that are post civil rights era, right? So that's why many of you had to redo it because if the author is contemporary but they're writing about slavery, well, that is not post civil rights era, right? Getting all these notifications, boy. So just go ahead and explain to me, oh, my book is about this. It's about this political struggle during the 1980s, or it's about this social struggle of, drug abuse amongst African American men living, growing up in the ghetto. Whatever the book is about, if you know what it's about, you'll be able to answer this question. Okay? And then what is the context of your project? That is what specifically do you want to cover? You can't cover it all. So some of these books cover all of these things. Well, I don't anticipate that in this small of a project that you can cover all of the social, political, and cultural issues that that book might bring up. Focus on some, focus on one or two, and that will be your project. Okay, so those of you that have no grade for that project proposal, research proposal, just resubmit it. And if I don't like it the second time, again, it's not that I don't like it or I don't like you. It's just that I don't think it's good enough for you to have a successful project. And that's the ultimate goal, is that you will have a successful project. Okay? So that's pretty much it for this announcement. We are starting Module 2. I want to make sure that you all understand that you have to complete Module 1 before you can move on. So here's the bad news. If you have not completed Module 1 by the end of this week, there's no way that you're going to be able to move on in this class. You'll have to end up dropping it and taking it again at another time. So all of you that are behind and have not completed Module 1, here it is. This is your week right now. You need to get in there and make sure that you've submitted. Now, some of these assignments are late, meaning that they're beyond the late week or late work policy, and so you still have to do them, and you may not receive any credit for them, but you still have to do them. So get caught up so that you can start fresh with Module 2, and then you can get on onto a good path. And let me just quickly show you. So module 1, let me go into the syllabus here really quick because it outlines each module for you. And I want to show you how this affects your grade. So you can see over here that module 1 was worth 10% of your overall grade. Well, if you weren't very successful, most of you were. I think there's like 12 A's in this class right now. That's awesome. And then many of you have B's as well. So there's only about 3 or 4 of you that are struggling at the moment. So I'm only speaking to you. But there's hope. It's only 10% of your grade was Module 1, where you may not have done very well. But you have to get in there and get that work done so that you can move on. Now, Module 2, you don't want to mess up with because that's 20% of your overall grade. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you start working on your solo project because that's going to end up being 12% of your overall grade. Some of your grades are so high right now because you've only had 2 assignments in the solo project area, 3 points each. So those 6 points outweigh your 10% for all of those points that you did for Module 1. So your solo project is carrying you right now. That's going to change a little bit once we get into Module 2, so you want to keep an eye on that. So some of you might see a grade drop temporarily as you start doing some of these assignments. But the key thing is to keep up on things. You can do this. Plan your time. It's not difficult. I'm sure most of you will admit that it's not hard work. It's just a lot of work. But if you make time for it, you can do it. Okay, now one last piece of advice is if you don't score high enough on a particular lesson, not all of the lessons you're able to do this, but many of them you can go back in and do the lesson again. So if the lesson is worth 20 points and you only get 12, go back in and do it again. But be aware that The lesson might only be 12 because there's an essay that you had to write and that hasn't been graded yet. But you want to make sure that you can get all of the points of multiple choice points before I get to grading that essay. So if the essay was worth 10 and the other points were worth 10, you want to make sure you get 10, not 8, not 6. Go back in, get those points. They all add up and they will all help your grade. So you have that opportunity on most of the work in this course. Okay, so that's it for this announcement. If you have any questions, hey, stop by. It was nice visiting with one of my students this morning. But if you can't stop by and you're not on campus, send me a text message. And if you send me an email in the inbox in Canvas, it's going to take me a little bit longer to get to that one. So send me a text message or send me an email to my email address, drcoop@freshmancomp.com. All right, that's it. Have a great day.